Johnny, Mike, how are you this evening? Thanks for getting on the Zoom session again together.
Hey, we're doing good here.
Yeah, I'm doing excellent. Thanks for having me. Nice cup, Johnny.
Thanks for asking, Mike. I've got a little El Chocolate Caliente con Drama. That's what we call it anyway.
Explain further, please.
All right. So it's hot chocolate with drama. And the drama in this case is Uller, which is delicious. A little bit hard to find, but Uller, if you watched last week's podcast or the last one we did, episode 1, I talked a little bit about my hobbies with winter sports and everything else. So Uller was the Nordic god of snow and ice. So it's like the ultimate winter sports mixer. So yeah, there you go. And thanks for the cup, Joe. This was Joe's. Look at the beautiful logo that used to be here. This was Joe's very first giveaway from MedCurity.
No, it predates MedCurity. MedCurity is all quality swag. This was Medibeat. This was the consulting company. Yeah,
that's right.
Yeah, so that was, I'm on my own. I didn't have any money. That was a very cheap swag effort. And like yours, all of our mugs immediately lost the logo the first time we washed them. And so I was really proud of that. So we got a lot of plain white mugs floating around here but it's got the cool red inside. And MedCurity mugs are fantastic because I learned my lesson on those Medibeat mugs.
Yes.
I'll live and learn. You never lose if you're learning, right?
That's right.
Yeah, I'm on my way. I'm needing some big change. Like, how are things still the same? They finding me entertaining. Could never be imitated. Can't wait to say that I made it.
Welcome to Hustle On, the podcast about startups in Spokane and across the inland Northwest.
Welcome to Hustle On, Mike Cummins and Johnny Warren. It's great to be together, guys, and have a chance to talk through, especially what Mike is working on right now. And I think we'll just kick it to you, Mike, to start us out. Can you tell us about ProvComp, the background of the company and the inspiration that brought you here, and we'll go from there.
Yeah. ProvComp was brought on when I was an administrator of a private family practice clinic in Coeur d'Alene. They wanted to redo their compensation model. And so I started doing some research online of there had to be something out there that would help us build a compensation model. After many searches and many reviews, I found literally nothing that would help me build a compensation model from the ground up. So I started getting the idea, started doing some of my own investigation. One of the things I found is the number one reason, or one of the top 3 reasons why an administrator gets fired, is redoing a compensation model. Having a master's in healthcare administration myself and working with physicians who, in their schooling and my schooling, it's not a class that you go through on how to build a compensation model. So through that process, I started wondering, well, this is something. There's got to be something here for small practices. So started looking into it, built a kind of like a kind of a beginning model. And started showing it to some people that are in that sphere, that domain, and kind of started building some traction that way. And then, pushed out and started working on building the concept of ProvComp.
Hey, Mike, Joe and I both have some background in healthcare for sure. Joe still obviously works in it with this startup. For those who aren't familiar with compensation models, what do you mean for the layman outside of the healthcare world?
Yeah, and I think this is the struggle, especially when it comes to pitch decks and working with trying to get investors, is trying to help them understand the healthcare world. Most of them understand, SaaSes and software, but when it actually comes to compensation models, that's it's basically a black hole. So compensation models are basically a way in which physicians break out the revenue that they receive from insurance companies. There's a million different ways to do it. There's 1,000 ways to slice the pie. There's always going to be a winner and a loser. And so right now it's a hot topic. Actually, 30% of all national conferences deal with this topic of compensation because more and more insurances are moving to a value-based contract rather than fee-for-service, which means I see the patient, I get paid for the services that I do, where value-based contracts are more like, I see the patient today, but at the end of the year, I'm going to have to report on all these quality metrics. if I meet those quality metrics, that gets me in the sphere of being able to get this money. But then there are other requirements that I have to do. And as long as I meet those requirements, then 9 months later, the following year, I actually get paid on that money. So it just brings a lot of confusion and a lot of reworking of current compensation models, because their current compensation model doesn't bring that aspect into the calculations, which is another reason why this is so important and such a hot topic right now. That's kind of what compensation is. It's just the way that physician groups slice the pie of the money that they receive. Basically, the concept is, there's team-based and individual-based. Whether you're even in a group practice or you're by yourself, there's still that aspect to it. And then do you focus on revenue first or expenses first? So by looking at those kind of two XY axes, it tells me kind of where to fall in how to build that compensation model for that group.
Taking some practical takeaways from what you just shared, you took this to market one way or another, right? You said you went out and got some input from the market on your platform idea. How far did you go along mocking that up? Did you have some kind of working model? Did you have just a drawn out, concept on paper that you brought? How did you approach sharing the idea before you've been able to invest a lot of time and money into it?
Yeah, so basically what I did is, through that concept of knowing where they fall in that matrix of team, individual, revenue, expense, it was then building a landing page, an Excel spreadsheet of all the different questions that you could break out a compensation model from, and then building out 30 different plans that revert back to that landing page. So no matter what option they choose, they could look at 30 different models to pick which one works best for them, and kind of hones them in on how they want to see how they want to break out their compensation. So it was basically showing different physicians of different practices. So family practice, ENT doc, a general surgeon, and a physiatrist, looking at those, showing them kind of what I did and how they would utilize it, was kind of like the beginning process of, vetting this idea out and seeing if it was marketable.
So did you approach this just by yourself? Do you have founders or kind of a team in the mix yet? And can you give us a little bit of the idea of how you're forming your early stage company here?
Yeah. Well, first off, Joe, I reached out to you in the very, very beginning. And in that process, it was kind of like on your market, set, go, because it felt like here was an idea. I vetted it through a few people. You were one of them, and you said, yeah, this could be viable, because I have in MedCurity, you've had people ask you specifically about compensation builds. And so through that process, it was like, okay, I have to go out and find founders, because no one's going to invest in a single, more often than not, no one invests in a single ownership company. So I went out and found experts in the field in my domain and quickly got them on board, quickly built my pitch deck. And between the concept and actually pitching was like a month and a half. And, like anything, I hit a roadblock. I didn't have an IT company that was there to help build it. So when I first pitched, it was go find these things and come back. And so that's basically what I've been working on ever since. Working full time, building this on the side, brings its own stresses. And then I think also, sprinting right from the beginning and just trying to find those people that were experts in the domain was both good and bad. I mean, it was good because it kind of helped solidify some of the thoughts and the plans that I was building. But on the backside, it was bad because, right fit, so I think too many times you can sprint out the gates and feel you're grabbing the right people because they're experts in the field. But in the end, you realize that they're not the right fit for what I'm trying to do.
So, hey, on that, what would you approach differently so far while the takeaways are fresh? If you're rebuilding this, or even now as you continue to build out a team, any takeaways on how you kind of gauge for fit beyond just competency or experience?
Yeah, I've actually been processing through that. There's actually a good book called Get a Grip. It's about traction for entrepreneurials. And in that book, it identifies, kind of what are your core values and the things that, there's things that are just the right to play in the field, like are they trustworthy? Well, that's just something you have to have in order to be part of ProvComp, right? But there are those intangibles that, what separates us, what's going to separate us from the pack. And really the pack right now includes two other companies that are in this sphere of helping providers build compensation models, but they're so focused on the large, hospital systems, universities, that the smaller practices, and kind of going back to your original question of why ProvComp, is because my passion is for the small practice. My passion is that I think, when we get to big corporations, it loses the touch of the one-on-one direct patient care. Not to say that those providers don't care about their patients, but it is about, certain metrics that you have to hit. Where in a private practice, you get to set your own metrics. So you can kind of slow down, not see as many patients. And so to me, that's what I am passionate about, is those physician groups that are 20 or less is really kind of where I'm focused in on for the ProvComp. But kind of going back to your question too, is, what have I learned? What I've learned is slow down, identify who I want to be as a company first, and then make sure that those people that I'm trying to bring on fit that mold. And kind of what I found was, I want to grow fast and get out quick, where one of my founders originally wanted to go slow and kind of build an LLC and do onesie twosies and, maybe eventually get to a place where we had investors, where I want to get to investors way faster.
So some of those long range goals, having a clear idea of where you're headed, it sounds like can be extremely valuable, even very early on. Just when you're testing the market and you're just having these initial conversations to frame up what the company could look like, you're saying you have at least a sense of your time frame ahead and what you want out of the company in the long run.
Yeah.
So you mentioned you're working a full-time job. How are you managing your time? I mean, you've got a lot on your plate, Mike. I know this. How do you stay motivated? How do you manage launching this startup, keeping progress and momentum going while family, work, et cetera, is going on as well?
I think the biggest thing is just networking, being involved in Shine, which is the project that you guys have, and meeting with other entrepreneurs in Spokane and even outside Spokane. I'm part of Life Sciences of Washington. I have 5 mentors that I meet with every month. So there's timelines and there's, and that's strategic for me. It's because if I don't have that pressure put on me, it's easy to kind of set things aside, which is kind of what happened there for a while when I didn't have those pressures. And even though I had 2 co-founders, a lot of it laid on myself to kind of figure out and build and process. And that's one of the things I learned about myself too, is that I'm an entrepreneur that needs to be in part of a team. I'm not a lone ranger. And so identifying that team is beneficial. So just, not only internally, but also externally in my networking field of who are those people that can come alongside and kind of help motivate, push me through, give me advice, help answer questions has been very beneficial.
Like you've mentioned networking at least once or twice. I think during our talk here, Joe and I last week talked a bit about networking and how it's changed since the pandemic hit. Is that impacting you in finding people? What are those networking events like? I know you mentioned Shine, which was an outdoor local one where we had a lot of people together and it was fantastic. But where are you networking at right now, and how are you running into these people?
Networking is really in my sphere of people that I already knew. And so I'm meeting with them one-on-one with coffee, a beer after work, things like that. Other networks are through LinkedIn. That's always a great reference of just reaching out to people that might be an expert in the field, saying, hey, this is something that I'm working on. Do you have any advice or expertise or someone, maybe locally or outside of the sphere that I can get in contact with? And then, like I said, Life Sciences of Washington, getting plugged into those agencies that, whatever sphere that you're trying to build your program, your project in, there might be some sort of group that you can get connected with that will give you those networking possibilities. For instance, life size of Washington.
So on the LinkedIn thing, that actually fascinates me. I have a love-hate relationship with LinkedIn. So many people like connect with you, and the very next thing they're trying to sell you something, and it really bugs me. So have you been reaching out to people that you don't know at all on LinkedIn and being like, hey, here's what I'm working on. Are you interested? Can you provide me with the half hour? Like, what's that look like when you're reaching out to those people?
Yeah, I'm very mindful of that, because you're right, Johnny, that annoys me as well. Hey, I want to be your friend, connect, and then the next thing you know, boom, I'm getting spammed with, you need to buy this or that, and it's frustrating. So I don't want to be that guy. So I'm very mindful of that. So when someone befriends me that I might be looking at, especially like with IT stuff and programming stuff, I'll just reach out to them and say, hey, this is what I'm doing. You seem to be an expert in it. I just want to know, do you have any advice to what to look in? And I think if you make them feel like they're an expert in a field and you're asking them for their advice, most people then will be like, oh, this guy sees me as an expert. Sure, I want to share what I know, and so they're more willing to kind of give you those pieces of advice, and being mindful of how much you're asking, because no one's just going to give you everything they have. So being specific and identifying, one aspect that I might need help with has been beneficial as well. But for those times where I just reach out and say, hey, I'm working on this. This is my side project. You seem to be an expert. I'm really concerned about this issue. What would you give as advice?
Yeah, I think the key there, what you said, people is trying to sell us stuff or pushing stuff on us, and you're trying to pull from people. And I think that's a big key. So
yeah,
great points.
I'd like to kind of see Spokane as unique in this. And I've heard that from others that have moved to Spokane, that that willingness to sit down with anybody is prevalent here. And I think each of you obviously are examples of that. But I think I've found when I've needed to reach out in a variety of areas, potential partnerships, all the way to how did you raise money? How did you get past these obstacles? I've found that in Spokane, I think pretty much always I get, yeah, I'll give you, buy me a cup of coffee, let's talk. And that's really special. And it's also not something that you might expect if you haven't made those asks before. But you'll find out that those people that you respect, even if you don't have an immediate connection that you can reference, so often will say, yes, let's chat, let's share what I've learned. And that's going to be really big to Spokane's future, right? To be able to see more successes come out of it. What else, to either of you, maybe start with Michael, what else is special about Spokane? You have any other ways that the Inland Northwest has been supportive to your work and getting to the point that you've gotten so far with ProvComp?
Yeah, I think two shouts out. The first one would be Greater Spokane Inc. They gave us $10,000 to kind of start the process and, get our S Corp up and running. We started S Corp first just because of ease and not knowing, kind of the lay of the land, and talking to some of my friends, that was the best way to go. I know at some point I'll have to go to a C Corp for investing. So that, Greater Spokane was a huge help. And then the other aspect is Heather from Drip 7, who's been a huge help to me as well. And going back to what you said, Joe, she didn't know me from Adam when we first started this process. Met her at a Shine event, reached out to her, asked her, some questions about, hey, what do you think about this? And she was interested and wanted to help. So she's been very instrumental in just helping me understand the computer programming side of things and what to look for and how to process. And so I think those two aspects, which just go back to what you said, everybody here in Spokane, it's a large city with a small town mentality. We want to help each other. We want to see people succeed. And so, when anybody has an idea, I mean, Johnny and I even went to coffee recently just to talk about an idea, and so anybody, as long as you're willing to ask, people are willing to come and help and come alongside and, just be an ear for sure.
I like that you said anybody, even Johnny.
Even this guy. Yeah.
Even this guy.
So to tag on to what you both said there about Spokane, obviously this whole thing is about Spokane and startups and entrepreneurialism here. But for people watching this right now that are maybe new to the area or getting ready to move, I would say let's put our LinkedIn profiles right in the part of the, below the video here in the description. Reach out to us. We've been here for a long time. We've been doing this. We're very networked in Spokane. One of the three of us for sure should be able to get connected with someone If this podcast has you looking for contacts, yeah, use us. That's what we're here for.
Absolutely. We'll put the LinkedIn contacts in the show notes and Mike's email address for any sales inquiries. We got you covered. We got you covered. Mike, if I could turn it back to you. No, what's next for ProvComp? What's your vision 2022 as we're about month in, at least into this year? What do you see ahead for you?
Yeah, so this year is the year for getting it actually off the ground, right? So I've been meeting with people to get investors. A good friend of mine is willing to invest a large sum of money that should get us up and running our MVP. And then it will be launching it to a few clinics that I've already said once it's built, I'll use it. So there'll be beta test sites. And then once we work out the kinks, it will be launching it live. That's where I said Heather's been a huge help. You know, she's kind of helping me identify some IT people to really kind of, you know, framework the look and feel. So I'm not spending so much money on, you know, local, but then bringing it back to local when it's actually time to get it programmed and stuff. So that's the goal for this year, is getting it up and launching and getting going.
Just to echo what you said, Heather from Drip 7 is awesome. And it's great giving her some shout outs there. Yeah. So we, maybe a closing question, and unless Johnny, you've got any other topics to hit on here as well, thought I'd throw this out for you. Johnny answered it last week. Any favorite restaurants or bar or winery in Spokane? And the reason I think it's a fun question is because the landscape for food and beverage has shifted in the last couple of years, you know, unfortunately in some ways, but we have some new and great places as well. So whether it's new, old, where do you like going out to dinner these days?
My favorite restaurant in Spokane is Wild Sage. Favorite kind of brewery would be Whistle Punk. And favorite coffee, I would probably say Wake Up Calls, where I meet most of my people in the mornings.
I knew you were a good guy. I love Wake Up Call, man. This stuff's delicious.
I've had those early morning meetings with you at Wake Up Call. Those are the only time I'll take a 6 a.m. meeting, is if Mike's saying, yeah, 6 a.m. Let's go. Okay.
It's usually when I meet with most people, but I meet with people at Thomas Hammer, Starbucks, Ladder Coffee. That's another good one I like in town. But kind of the staple where I go to more often is Wake Up Call.
Well, Mike, we can't wait to have future conversations with you as you continue your journey. I'm sure you're going to have some great wins from the year to share. So keep up the great work. It's an inspiration to us. And thank you for taking some time to chat with us here on Hustle On.